Hello everyone, this is Grace. It is December the 18th, 2022, and we are continuing our look into the Lunar Sabbath. And we are going to be taking a look at their claim that there are 2 months in a row where the Sabbath lands on the 15th, in that throughout the Bible, the Sabbath lands on the 15th. So we're going to take a look at a couple of those claims. But first, I do have a couple of corrections that I want to make from the last video. Well, in the last video, I said, I'll read this to you. Let me read it through. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. I implied that God made the 2 lights here. That's not correct. This word "made" here actually means had made. God made the lights up here, where he said, "Let there be lights," and the lights were made instantaneously. As we read down, we get here and it explains what was meant by what he made up here. So it's God had made, when he said, "Let there be lights," he had made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. I'm pointing this out not because to be petty or anything, but apparently this is an argument on the lunar Sabbath. I don't remember the point of the argument, or I would explain it to you. But just to clear it up, this does mean had made. So he had made the lights up here, not down here. And then he was explaining to you what had happened when he spoke. Okay? Another thing I wanted to correct was I said that I got the great lights were made as lights, and so the moon therefore could not be dark. I said I got that from the Lunar Sabbatarians. That is not correct. I got that from the opponents, from those that go against the Lunar Sabbath. And I want to thank them, because the only way I could learn about the Lunar Sabbath was through those that were against the Lunar Sabbath. I really could learn very little from the Lunar Sabbatarians. They were very vague. That's nothing. When I say stuff about the Lunar Sabbatarians, just understand that I'm never speaking about the members. Never. The members are quite lovely people. Lovely, God-fearing people. Study like you and I. The leaders are very vague, and as far as I can tell, very tricky. Okay, they seem to intentionally hide the truth and double talk. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to be mean, I'm not trying to be offensive, but I have had to watch a whole lot of videos in order to get to even a remote understanding of what the Lunar Sabbatarians teach. And I got that understanding almost entirely from watching the opponents of the Lunar Sabbath. They had to explain to me what the Lunar Sabbatarians teach so that I could even investigate it and form an argument or an idea for it or against it. So I'm not trying to be mean. I truly am not. But I am being honest. I am being honest. So, but it's not against the people at all. People are beautiful people. They study. They're like us. We see a lot of discrepancies, seeming discrepancies in the Bible, and we want answers. They're like us. The problem is they gave up logic in order to do it. That's where we part. So let's go ahead and look at the first claim for the 15th. So we'll read through this. "And they departed from Ramses in the 1st month, on the 15th day of the month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians." Now we know that they did not part out on the 15th day of the month. Okay, we know that they did not do this. But there are other scriptures as well which provide us with more than this to look at. So let's go ahead and look at another example. I don't even know why I put that in there in hindsight. But let's look at this. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, that were men besides children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough, which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt, and could not tarry. Neither had they prepared for themselves any victuals. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord, for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is that night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. Okay. So we are told that they left on the 15th. And so we are also told that that is a Sabbath. However, it tells you that they clearly cooked on that day. Now, we believe cooking is okay. We believe that a lot of the stuff that's done here is okay. But it may be an issue with them. It's not with us. So they clearly cooked on that day. And then it tells you a mixed multitude went up also with them, their flocks and their herds, and very much cattle. I have a couple of more scriptures for that. Okay, well, first let's look at the law. The law is, because I put this in a different order. No, let's look at the other scriptures first. We'll come back to that. And Moses said, it is not meet so to do. We will go 3 days' journeys into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he has commanded us. And Moses said, we will go with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds will we go, for we must hold a feast unto the Lord. So they took all the workings for a feast, all the family, all the cattle, everybody went. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not be a hoof left behind, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God. And we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. So let's go look at the law. The law is, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy maidservant, nor thy manservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. If they took everything, every man, every child, every piece of cattle, they took food for the feast. Now we know afterwards, of course, that they literally took everything. They moved everything they owned, took everything with them. All of that stuff would have had to have gone on the back of the cattle. They were not walking out of there with loads of furniture and clothes on their backs. They weren't doing that. They took everything with them. They even borrowed stuff. They needed things for the feast. They needed things to live with. They needed their camping material. All of that went with them. There's no way that they left out of there on the Sabbath. There's just no possible way. They would have had to have worked their cattle. It would have been a clear violation of the law which had been set for them that helped to bring them out of Egypt. They knew they couldn't be breaking the Sabbath, and why would God have them leave on the Sabbath? It absolutely could not have been done. I want to stress, though, that you can move on the Sabbath. I don't want you to think that this has anything to do with you. You can pack up all your boxes. You can put them in the truck. You can get some friends to help you. That's fine if they want to volunteer. You can drive them to your house, unpack them. You are good because you're using a car. As long as you get, as long as you're not involving working anyone else, then you're good. And your neighbors can help you too. They can volunteer if they want to. It is perfectly within the law for you to do so. But you cannot work your animals. They have no say. They have no say. So this was not done on the 15th as they claim. Let me also say something. I actually do want to point out that this was a valid argument. If I actually went through the calendar and I looked, and having 2 Sabbaths on the same schedule is a rare thing. I did look at that. Now I don't have a calendar maker, so I did not look up each new moon day and then decide. But I looked at a regular calendar, and it's very rare. It just doesn't happen a lot. And they used to claim that it was 3 Sabbaths in a row that were on the 15th. They dropped the last one because the last one actually conflicted with their first claim. The first claim is that they left on the 15th. They used to say it was 3 months in a row, but the third month required that they left on the 16th. So they got rid of that. But even 2 months in a row is rare enough for it to be investigated. So that's why this would have been a valid claim if it were true. None of them are true. None of them are true, but it would have been a good argument for it. So let's continue on to the next scripture that they give us. Here we go. Exodus 16:1. And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. Now we already established that you cannot travel on the Sabbath, okay? But we're going to overlook that because there's a whole lot of other scriptures to look at here. We don't have to have just that one in order to prove their point, because we know that they tampered with things. So they could have tampered with this, they could have tampered with that. We have other scriptures to investigate to see if it's a valid claim. So let's continue reading. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full, for ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you and the people, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that in the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel at even, ye shall know that the Lord has brought you out from the land of Egypt, and in the morning ye shall see the glory of the Lord, for he heareth your murmurings against the Lord. And what are we that ye murmur against us? And Moses said, this shall be, when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For that the Lord heareth your murmurings which ye murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. So, the Lord rains down manna from heaven, and they receive the manna, and they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which the Lord hath said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. So, let me say this. On a surface reading of this, I think it might very well be very harmless, given our typical understanding of the Sabbath. This absolutely cannot mean that the 15th was on a Sabbath if you use the lunar Sabbath calculations. It absolutely cannot be. On a surface reading, he tells them that he's going to rain manna down from heaven, and it's going to begin first they're going to get meat at the evening, so that's the next day, right? So you would think that the first day it was the Sabbath, and then at even, which would be the first day, they got the meat, and then on the same morning they got the manna, still the first day. So they got manna for 6 days, and they gathered for 6 days, and then on the 6th day they got twice as much. It couldn't have happened like that. It couldn't have happened like that. Not under the lunar Sabbath. It's impossible for it to have happened like that under the lunar Sabbath. As a matter of fact, impossible. And the reason why is because, and I'm going to look at the scripture after this, but I'm just going to make reference to it. They talk about Ezekiel 46. And one of the things that, 46 verse 1, and one of the things that they're very peculiar about pointing out is that there had to be 6 working days before the Sabbath. Here, we're told that it's the 15th day of the second month. So when you come down here and it says the 6th day, this has to say the 6th working day. The 6th day cannot be the 6th day. For us, it's the 6th day. We have a verse in Genesis that says, hold on. The evening and the morning were the 6th day. They don't follow this. They require 6 working days. So, if you come to Ezekiel 16, and it tells you, on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread. No, absolutely not. This is not the 6th day. This needs to be the 6th working day, because the 6th day has to either be the 6th day of the week or the 6th day of the month, neither of which can apply if the day is the 15th. It doesn't work. What happened was they went there on the 15th, which we don't believe. We don't believe that this was the 15th, but let's just say it was. The people were complaining, and some time went by. Then the Lord came to Moses on a different day other than the Sabbath. It would have had to have been a day other than the Sabbath. And they gathered manna. They gathered more manna, and then on the 6th day of the week, they got twice as much manna as they normally would. Now, it may seem like a petty thing, but it's not a petty thing. Because when you go to Ezekiel 46, let's jump there. When you look at Ezekiel 46, let's just consider what they say. Thus saith the Lord God, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened, and on the day of the new moon it shall be opened. What they tell us is that, hey, look, we're going to ignore all of the holy days. You must have 6 working days in order for the Sabbath to be next. But not only that, we're going to throw a little caveat in there. We're going to make this new moon day, a Sabbath. We're going to say, hey, the new moon day is a Sabbath. So you can't have that as a working day either. You can go ahead and keep the Day of Atonement, the Passover, the last day of the Feast Day of Unleavened Bread, the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. You can keep all those days. Those days are fine. But we're going to make this a Sabbath day, and we're going to tell you that you can't have 6 working days because we've now made this into a Sabbath, literally putting it over the Sabbath. I just want to go back for a moment, and I want to remind you that when the Sabbath was made at creation, and even when we look in Leviticus, it is separated from the other laws. It gives you the feast days, and then it lists the Sabbath. It's completely separate. separate from every other law. Completely separate. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day of the Sabbath is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. It was made at creation. Everything else is listed separate from the Sabbath. These are the feasts of the Lord. They even give you the introduction separately. But they take the moon day, put it over the Sabbath, and say, hey, you can't have 6 working days because we're making the moon day a Sabbath. It requires the 6 working days. Do you see? It has to be 6 working days because they pick any day of the month. But they will make exceptions for the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, etc., etc. It is impossible for this to be the 6th day. It is impossible. There's no way for us to logically make this into the Sabbath day. Not logically. Not after we've been told it's the 15th day of the month. We're okay with it on our side. The Lunar Sabbatarians cannot say that. Let's move on to the next one. Actually, hold on, because I think I marked up a lot of other scriptures where I wanted to show you. I can't remember why I marked them. I think, oh yeah, it's about the 6th day. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is the Sabbath of the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the fields. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. So, see, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. It is 6 working days. I do want to say that. They worked by gathering their food the 6 days. But that does not work with the lunar Sabbath. That's not good enough. The 6th day is still the 6th day. And their Sabbaths are on the 8th. That would require this to be the 7th day. The 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. It doesn't logically work out. And even if it did logically work out, there would be no evidence that it was given on that this happened on the Sabbath. It would just have to be implied. Even if we ignore the fact that he says the 6th day and not the 6th working day, you would still have to imply that they had been receiving it all week. That's why I said it's okay if you want to see it that way. It's just implied. It's not. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. All right. So Joshua. So Joshua is not part of the 2 months in a row, but it is listed as having happened on the 15th day of the month as well, which would be, again, the arguments are not without merit. They're very good arguments. They just really wanted it to be there because they really wanted an answer. Let's take a look at Joshua. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at even in the plains of Jericho. And they did eat of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the selfsame day. And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna any more, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. All of these verses for the Passover have been tampered with. It's really a shame. We're going to see that here as well. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at even. So we've established that it's the 14th. The 14th day of the month at even in the plains of Jericho. So they ate of the old corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover. The problem is they didn't know what on the morrow meant. On the morrow means the same day in the morning. They thought it was the next day on the 15th. It is not. On the morrow is the same day in the morning time, during the morning hours, from 12 to 6 from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. figuratively. So, but we're going to ignore that. We're going to look at the fact that it says they ate of the old corn in the land on the morrow after the Passover. So if they ate their own food on the Passover, even though they were there in the land, why did they wait until the morrow after? Why did they wait until the next day to eat the old corn of the land? I will show you here. Because there is a law that says you cannot eat of the land until after you have waved the wave sheaf. Speaking to the children of Israel and say unto them, when ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the firstfruits of your harvest unto the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you. The morrow after the Sabbath the priest shall wave it. The morning. So you have your Sabbath on during the evening time, you do not wave it. During the morning time of the Sabbath, you would wave it. That's what's being said here. The morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And ye shall offer that day, when ye wave the wave sheaf, an he lamb without blemish of the first year, for the burnt offering unto the Lord. And the meat offering thereof shall be 2 tenths deal of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto the Lord for its sweet savor. And the drink offering thereof shall be of wine, the 4th part of a hin. And ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your God. Now we know that this is not correct. We know that Jesus went before God after the Sabbath. Everything has just been tampered with. It's really a shame, but it's just the way it is. That's what the word means. It means the same morning. They messed with it here. They messed with it everywhere else. Well, I mean, not everywhere, because we had to find the definition elsewhere. But it doesn't mean the next day. It means in the morning. Okay, so let's go back. So we're going to look at this as though it is written correctly, and then we're going to address the fact that it is not written correctly. But first, we'll just take it as though the morrow after is the 15th. Hold on. I got to get my mind straight in order to think of it as the 15th. Just a moment. Give me a second. So they ate of the old corn of the land on the 15th. Just a minute. Okay, I'm trying to get it straight in my head because I have 2 pictures here, what it says happened and what they're trying to say has happened. So if they kept the Passover on the 14th, and then they waved the wave sheaf the next day, then the Sabbath would have had to have been on the 14th, is what I'm trying to say. So the Sabbath, because, they waved the wave sheaf on the morrow after the Sabbath. So let's say the 14th was a regular work day, okay? Or let's say the 14th was a Monday. No, let's say the 14th was a Friday. And then the next day was the Sabbath. Then they could not have waved the wave sheaf on the Sabbath. They would have had to have waved the wave sheaf the following day after the Sabbath. Okay? Or If we take it as it's written, then where the morrow after means the morning, then we're looking at the morning of the 14th day, not the 15th day. So you have your Passover on the 14th, which would be the Sabbath. You would wave the wave sheaf the morning of the 14th, still the 14th, and then they could eat that same day. I think I got that right. Maybe I can draw a chart. Hold on. Okay, I did a graph. And it's almost perfectly works out if you use the this morrow instead of the next morning, if you use it as the next day. Okay, so we're just going to ignore this. Okay, this is what it says, but this is what we are going to take it to mean. Okay, this is their argument. So the Passover came, they ate manna and kept the Passover, and then the next day they did the wave sheaf, and then they were able to eat the corn of the land after they waved the wave sheaf. That would make this day the Sabbath, the 15th, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So they said in the writing, they said the next day the manna ceased. Neither had the children of Israel manna anymore, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. The manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land. That's the only flaw that I could find in it. Actually, I didn't even find that. I watched a video and they pointed this out. I remembered. They put that the manna ceased here, but in actuality, the manna would have ceased on the 14th. There would have been no manna if this would have been, there would have been no manna on this day or this day, and then the manna would have actually ceased on this day, on the 13th. So that's the only flaw that I can find outside of grammatical errors where they tampered with the scriptures. I'm not going to go into the, because it's clear they tampered with it, I'm not going to go into the other scriptures that I had made. I did investigate this because if it were true, if there was any truth or validation to it, it does imply that that manna would have actually fallen on the holy days, which would have been a whole, anyway, I investigated it a little bit and it didn't work out. So I think that they just didn't understand what this word meant when they put it in here. I think that they did mean for it to be tomorrow, the next day, and not the following morning of the same day. Either way, this is very, very close. It's just this one error that they made where the manna would have actually ceased. I put this in the wrong day. It would have ceased on this day. There would have been no manna on this day or this day going forward. Either way, it's not 3 months in a row. I think that's my whole argument. I don't want to get into the other scriptures. Those scriptures are just things that I put in here to show that I investigated the claim that manna may have fallen on those days, to convince you otherwise by looking at the actual words. So I'm going to close out here, and I will talk to you in the next video.